You need to know about the Secure Act because it changes the rules around what happens to your retirement accounts when you're gone. We have a panel of three people here today to talk to you. I'm Stephanie McCullough of Sofia Financial. We have Rebecca Sallen of Sallen Law Firm in the Philadelphia area, Kevin Gaines of American Financial Management Group. We feel that no one is talking about the Secure Act. People don't understand it enough, and yet it is crucial. Rebecca, when you look at this new law, what do you think is the most important thing people need to do in terms of their retirement accounts?
Great question, Stephanie. They absolutely need to get in touch with their financial advisor. They need to talk to their accountant, and they need to update their estate plan. There were a lot of mechanisms that we had before to cure problems or to do some post-death estate planning that are now completely off the table. I'm going to recommend to everyone not only to meet with those three people, to meet with your team, but also to check your beneficiary designation. It is absolutely crucial that you have specific people, individuals that are named and not an estate of or having no designation. Because while the Secure Act requires a 10-year distribution, a beneficiary going to as a estate only has 5 years, which makes a huge difference when it comes to how much money your beneficiaries are going to be receiving and how much taxes are going to be going out to Uncle Sam.
Yeah, that's a big one. We have always been after our clients to update and take a look at their beneficiary designations, but you're saying it's even more crucial now.
Absolutely.
Kevin, help us understand, if I have $1 million in an IRA and I leave it to my kids, are they getting $1 million?
They are not getting $1 million. Not quite sure how much they're going to get, but it's going to be a lot less because there's a few entities floating around in this country that are going to take their share. Uncle Sam, whatever state you live in, maybe even cities and such. So $1 million could very easily become $500,000, depending on your beneficiary situation. That's why beneficiaries are so important, to make sure you look at this and understand how it's going to impact them, because that may not be what you want to have happen. Right now, we're enjoying some historically low tax rates. No guarantee that these tax rates are going to stay where they are. So, when I just said 500,000, it may now even be less as stuff changes.
And in fact, under current tax law, the current brackets are going to sunset. They're going away unless Congress changes the rules.
Correct. After 2025, starting in your 2026 tax year, you're now back to the old rates, which had the maximum was up near 40%, 39.5, 39.6. So yeah, I mean, that's a big chunk of money that you want your kids, your grandkids, your friends, family, whatever to have. They're not getting. Uncle Sam's a part owner of this. Which a lot of people forget that.
Exactly. Your 403B, your 401k, your IRA, unless it has the word Roth attached to it, that's not all your money. So current tax brackets, here's a little picture to what happens. So Rebecca, you were talking before we started recording, about the importance of actually knowing who your beneficiaries are. Could you expand on that a bit?
Oh, absolutely. I think that when I talk to a lot of my clients, they have 2 kids. They always say, oh, I love my kids equally. I want to give them 50-50. And that might be fine because you have 2 good kids that you love very much. They don't have any issues. But you need to think about what tax situation they're in. Because under the rules that are, like you said, are meant to sunset, if they're going to be getting this money, it's going to be pushing them up to the next tax bracket. So it's, unless you think about who they are and what tax bracket they are in and how this money can be affecting them, you're really leaving things up to chance. I gave the example, I have a client who has one son who works for Google and another one is a public school teacher in Pittsburgh. They make 2 different salaries. Exactly, 2 very different salaries. And what is crazy is that the person who is a public school teacher is going to be getting less money because he's going to be going into one of the highest tax brackets versus the son who's at Google who's already in the highest tax bracket. And I don't think that that's what the parents thought was going to happen. So there are different ways that we can talk about protecting that money and making sure that those amounts are equal. But unless you talk to an estate planner, talk to your financial advisor and accountant, you can't just assume that if you have a 50-50 designation, that that's what they're going to be getting.
And then it's also important to know your state laws and implications, right? The crucial importance of updating those beneficiary designations. Could you tell us that example, Rebecca?
Absolutely. So you have the money that's going to be going out, obviously that you have to pay income tax on it federally, but also the state tax as well as the city tax if there's one.
So to make this concrete, I want to walk through a quick example of what could happen, just to make it a little bit more easy to think about. So in my example, I've got an 85-year-old person. Let's say her name is Mary. She has accumulated $1 million in her retirement account, in her IRA, and she passes away. Her beneficiary is her son, who happens to be 50 years old and married, and together he and his wife are making $80,000. So here's Mary thinking she's leaving Joe, her son, $1 million. But that's not actually the situation. So the last column over here is under the prior rules. Kevin, can you explain to us what's happening here?
Sure. So under the prior rules, when you could utilize the stretch IRA, which allowed the son to use his life expectancy to take the required distributions, he has this spread over 30 years. He doesn't have to take it out in 10. So he's taken a smaller amount each year, which keeps him in a lower tax bracket and allowing the money to grow, more of the money to grow, since he's taking less each time. As opposed to where we are now, he's taken it out in 10 years, less time to grow, and he's got to take bigger chunks of it.
Right.
Which, and there is some flexibility because you don't have the required distribution. So if he wanted to take, 100 or whatever each year, he could do that, or take it all at once, either beginning, end, or somewhere in between. And that's going to create some difference in the net inheritance, if you will. But none of these numbers are going to compare to what you could do under the stretch.
Right. So what we have here on this chart, this is an example from an article that was in Forbes about looking at the implications of the Secure Act, and we'll have the link in the notes. So there's 3 options in the new rules that this person was looking at: taking all the money out on day 1 or year 1 when they inherit it, and having that big distribution. That's $1 million of taxable income that year, bumped this son, Joe, up to the 37% tax bracket, and he only had $650,000 to spend. This assumes no state taxes and no inheritance taxes out of this money. And then if he instead waits to the end, to year 10, when he's required to take all that money out, it has grown. We're assuming a 6% return here. It has grown from the million to the 1.7, but he still doesn't get as much out. And Rebecca, you pointed out there's actually an issue with this assumption of the maximum tax rate of 37%. Could you explain?
Oh, absolutely. So this is the first year that the Secure Act is going to be effective. And we have these sunset rules that Stephanie, you alluded to before, that if everything stays the same, the tax rates will go up. If someone died today, and they would have to get out in 10 years, if nothing changes, the rate is going to go from 37 to 39.6%, which means that they're going to be getting even less amount spendable after tax.
Right. And that doesn't include the Medicare surcharge and the, any state taxes going on too. So I think the message here is that it really is super crucial to understand who your beneficiaries are on your retirement accounts, and to think specifically about those individuals or entities and what they're going to net out. In our next video, we're going to go into a little bit more detail about the different types of planning that you might consider. Please remember, none of this is intended to be specific advice to your situation. This is an educational video. We encourage you to talk to your professionals to get advice that really is custom to your situation. Thanks for joining us.